Welcome in YouTube Global Hoops Official. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. Gil McGregor here with Kyle Irving, and Kyle's our draft expert over on NBA.com. NBA draft's a little bit later than most years, but you got a big board over on NBA.com. And number one on that big board should be no surprise, Cade Cunningham from Oklahoma State University. Is he the best number one prospect we've had in how long? And honestly, is there no way anybody else goes number one other than him?
Man, with Zion Williamson 2 years ago, it's tough to say, too far back in the past that he's the best number one prospect, but I really do think that Cade Cunningham is, solidified his spot as the number one overall pick, no matter how the NBA draft lottery shakes out. I mean, this is a guy who's 6'8". He can play forward if he needs to, but he's more of a point guard. I want you to think like Luka Doncic. He's someone that he already has that lethal step back jumper in his game. He's unbelievable in the pick and rolls. He's more than capable of making advanced passes, creating for himself or his teammates. He's got a big body, big frame, 7-foot wingspan. He's someone that's, very intense on the defensive end, and he's someone that's also going to make winning plays for your team. He's everything that you're looking for in a number one pick, and he's as advanced as any other prospect in this draft class this year.
So we use the G word. Is he a generational talent?
I'd use the G word. I think he's a generational talent. I also think that he's a franchise-altering talent. He's somebody that you draft him in, within a year or two, your team is already going to be competing in your respective conference just because his skill set really is that developed already. There's not many areas of his game that needs polishing when he gets to this next level. And obviously he is going to continue to get better when he gets to the next level, but his game doesn't really need a lot of that right now. He's ready to make an impact immediately the second that he steps on an NBA floor.
So a big thing I noticed with your big board over on NBA.com and really just to talk about this draft class in general, there's a lot of talent. Even if you don't win the lottery and aren't picking number one, there's still some guys you can pick that can make an immediate impact in their rookie season. Now, that being said, there are a lot of names floating out there. I know it depends on who gets the number two pick, but if you're talking about just the best player available or the boxes they check, who are you looking at potentially going number two in this draft?
Well, on my big board, I had Evan Mobley, a freshman center out of USC, as the number two best prospect. And I think that's because he is, in my opinion, the best two-way prospect in this draft class. Jonathan Kuminga, who's another great two-way prospect who we're going to talk about a little bit, is flirting with that title. But the fact that Evan Mobley, at 7 feet tall with a 7'4" wingspan, with the quickness and athleticism that he has as a 7-footer is uncanny. And, he's more than capable of switching pick and rolls on the perimeter, which is one of the biggest aspects of the NBA game today. He's a big man who, as a lob threat, as a short roller, because he's a little bit quicker than clunkier bigs, he's not afraid to put the ball on the floor and make stuff happen like that. And he can even pop out, not necessarily to the perimeter. He hasn't knocked down that three-point shot as consistently as you would like to see from someone, like a Karl Anthony Towns almost, of a player who he kind of plays like a little bit. But he is more than capable of knocking down mid-range shots and making a difference that way. And I mean, he was the best shot blocker in college basketball. His defense is elite. He's somebody that I feel like is going to be able to be the focal point on the offense and the defense for defensive end for an NBA franchise right away.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that. Just looking at what big men bring to the table, especially versatile big men, and he's a guy who certainly checks those boxes. And I think a lot of the things we talk about that are his weaknesses, teams will probably look at and think that they can teach him and he can develop into being that perfect type of player. So definitely can understand why he's number two on your big board. But there's some guys who aren't that far behind. Jalen Suggs, you mentioned Jonathan Kuminga, and also Jalen Green. Is there a chance that any of those guys maybe pop up at number two? And what do you see from those guys that really set them apart from the rest of this draft class?
I think when you look at Jalen Suggs, you look at somebody who is just the definition of a leader. I mean, this guy was an elite quarterback coming out of high school. He had a number of high major Division I offers to play quarterback at the collegiate level. And I think that rubs off on his basketball game, the way that he plays. He was the best player, in my opinion, on that Gonzaga team. Even at the college level, he was the best player on that Gonzaga team. And just the way that he's always looking to make his teammates better first is, that speaks to the type of player that Jalen Suggs is. I look at him as kind of like a John Wall in a way where, he's at his best when he's in transition. He's always looking to kick to his teammates in transition if, that's what suits him best. But at the same time, he's not afraid to put the ball down to the floor and put his head down and put pressure on the rim. And he's super athletic, great body control. He's, a really good finisher around the rim. His jump shot needs a little bit of work like John Wall did coming out of college. But as we saw once John Wall got to the NBA, that he worked out the kinks of that jump shot and he started dominating the NBA game because of his ability to pass and play make and put his head down and go to the rim, put pressure on the rim and kind of affect the game that way first, relying on his jump shot last. And I think I see a lot of John Wall and Jalen Suggs. And I think that if a team were to end up with the number 2 pick and they really need a floor general, a presence like that who can command a team and lead a team and, get the best possible shot for all the other players that they have on their roster at the moment, I think Jalen Suggs is that guy. But when you're looking at, the best scorer in this draft class, pure scorer in this draft class, that's Jalen Green for sure. He's a walking highlight reel. He's electrifying. It's like he's got springs in his shoes when he's going to the rack. He's someone that, he puts the ball on the floor and he's at the rim in the blink of an eye. And he's a streaky shooter, which can, cause some trouble, as we saw in the G League in his one season where he had some games where he went, 2 for 7 from 3 or 1 for 8 from 3, and that's going to happen. But he also had some games where he's going off for 30 points, shooting extremely efficiently because he doesn't lack the confidence of taking those tough shots. And, he's a shot creator. He's a shot maker. He's someone that he has an array of dribble moves. He already has that step back in his package. He's someone that, he's going to take shots off balance and it might be a bad shot, but there are going to be games where it goes in and you shake your head at how incredible he is at scoring the rock. So I think that's where he could potentially work his way into that number 2 spot, where Jonathan Kuminga, his G League Ignite teammate, I would be surprised if he made the jump up to number 2. But in today's day and age in the NBA where versatility is paramount, I feel like that's where Jonathan Kuminga really excels as a prospect, because he's somebody that is going to be able to guard 1 through 4 at the next level immediately. He has the size and the strength, 7-foot wingspan. He's 6'8", 220 pounds. He's rock solid. He could potentially even play small ball 5 in some lineups. I think of him as like an OG Anunoby type, where offensively, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Jaylen Brown, where, the offensive game is there. And he likes attacking the rim and he has good body control. He has great leaping ability, but the ball handling is a little rusty right now. He doesn't have a ton of confidence in his jump shot, but I mean, we saw how that worked out for Jaylen Brown throughout the length of his career, as he had almost, an all NBA caliber season this year. I don't see why Jonathan Kuminga can't make similar progression as he goes on in the NBA, but I also feel like right now he's more of a project for a team that could potentially be picking, let's say, number 2 overall.
Yeah. I think the big thing you talked about with all the weaknesses for all these guys, there's the 2 Ignite guys and then the 3 guys who were one and dones at their respective schools. But all these guys are pretty much 1 year removed from playing at the high school level, wherever it was and however they did it. So these guys are super young and super raw, and there's so much room for improvement. And I think, even looking at the 2021 NBA playoffs and looking back at, guys from 2018 draft class, you have, DeAndre Ayton and Jaren Jackson Jr., all these guys that are actually already Trae Young, making their presence felt, Luka Doncic, in 3 short years. So when you talk about a draft class like this one, I certainly sense that level of star power with these guys, to where, Cade Cunningham, you mentioned, can alter the entire course of a franchise. So whoever lucks out and wins the lottery, you've got one. And these other guys who really check boxes of what's important in the modern day NBA, to where they can contribute to successful basketball right away. That's what the lottery is about. That is how you reverse the misfortune of teams that are having some bad luck, and some teams who have just had a down year could move up in the lottery and luck out and really alter things and fast track their return to prominence. So certainly worth being excited about, and I think that this draft class could go down to be one of the best in recent memory.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this draft class, especially when you look at the top 5 talent, there is a ton of solidified players that can, like I feel like I keep saying, can make an immediate impact in the NBA. And that's the difference between, let's say, this year's draft class and last year's draft class, who, was looked at before the draft as a draft class that wasn't very strong, but that's because it didn't have a ton of star power. And we found out very quickly in the 2021 season that there's going to be a lot of players from last year's draft class that'll be making an impact, whether it's as a role player or just filling a role on a team for years to come. Where with this draft class, especially with this top 5 group, I feel like there's a lot more, superstardom on the docket, kind of like we saw in that 2019 draft class that had players like Zion Williamson, John Morant, and RJ Barrett as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what all makes it exciting. Obviously, finding out where these guys are going to go when the draft lottery happens. And then the NBA draft, which is Thursday, July 29th, 2021. We've got you covered here on Global Hoops Official, as well as over on NBA.com. So make sure to subscribe and stay locked in with us over on NBA.com. We've got you updated big boards, mock drafts, scouting reports, so much surrounding a pretty fun 2021 NBA draft with no shortage of star power. Continue to keep it locked in with us for that. We've got you covered. For Kyle Irving, I'm Gil McGregor. Again, thanks for tuning in to Global Hoops Official. Make sure to subscribe, get these right in your feed, and we'll catch you next time.